against Boston when Jaylen Brown scares me a lot more than Jayson Tatum did.
Now listen, it's 1A, 1B. I believe that Jayson Tatum is the Batman, Jaylen Brown is the Robin, and that's not a bad thing to.
Jaylen Brown is the best player on the Boston Celtics, best all-around player.
Is Jayson Tatum really that much better than Jaylen Brown? I don't think so.
I believe he's thought of around the NBA circles through the players and the man and
only
the
because
GMs.
you throw in character and defense.
Well, I think Jaylen Brown plays as good a defense, if not better.
I do too. Okay.
What's up guys, it's Jayson. I'm here to talk about one of the most polarizing star duos of the last half decade. Immediately after making my The Difference Between Anthony Edwards versus Karl Anthony Towns video, I knew this duo I'll be talking about today was a clear next step. That duo goes by many names: 7-Eleven, NBA's Kid and Play, the Jays, or you might know them as Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. And today we'll be uncovering the differences between them. This duo's surrounding discourse has turned quite controversial in recent months. Of course, a lot of this has to do with their recent playoff run and finals bout with the eventual champion, the Golden State Warriors. You know I had to mention it. Regardless, the 25 and 24-year-old dyad showed a lot of promise and earned the respect of their peers with the performance over the course of the season. However, fans aren't as level-headed as those peers, and in turn, this duo reached near cataclysmic levels of controversy in different sports media landscapes. Starting with Tatum, he's averaged 21, 7, and 3 on 46, 38, 84% splits over his 5 seasons. So far in Tatum's career, he's a 3-time All-Star, a member of the All-Rookie First Team, and you can add on a first and third All-NBA team selections to that as well, which might be his most impressive feat yet in his still young career. As for Brown, he's put up 17, 5, and 2 on 47, 37, 71% splits through his 6 respective seasons. Brown's accolades consist of 1-time All-Star and a placement on the All-Rookie Second Team. Looking at the numbers plainly, you may be wondering why there's even a need for this video. That is, well, to put it plainly, Tatum has had the better numbers and accolades out of the two, and in one less year. However, upon their loss to the Warriors in the NBA Championship, there was an upheaval in discussions of who was the more valuable player for the Celtics during their playoff run. To sum it up, Tatum leading the playoffs in turnovers in addition to Brown averaging more points than him during the finals made some believe that Brown should be the focal point of the team. But as you can tell, the numbers will tell you differently. So I want to dive into the meat of this comparison past just raw stats and accolades to see what conclusions can be made then. Tatum, from the day he was born, was being sculpted to be a future NBA prospect. In the first grade, he even told his class he wanted to be an NBA player when he grew up. Not that anything was given easy to Tatum, rather it may have come easy to him after countless hours dedicated to his craft, per his high school coach Frank Bennett. Thanks to that, as well as his senior year consisting of averaging 30 points and 9 rebounds with 6 40-point games while leading his high school team to its second Missouri Class 5A state championship, it was clear that Tatum had the opportunity to help his family's financial situation and get to pursue his dream of being a professional basketball player. Tatum got the offer to join maybe the most significant NBA pipeline in the world with Duke University and Coach K. Scouts marveled at his 6'8" frame and scoring ability. It seemed as if his rise to stardom was inevitable, even then. Add that onto a year of averaging 17 points and 7 rebounds as a freshman, and Tatum's time to get on the grandest stage had been expedited again, even with Duke being upset by South Carolina in the second round. Being a consensus top 5 pick, it was no surprise that Tatum got picked up at number 3. Although, the shocking part was, it wasn't some rebuilding team that would have had to be bad enough to get the high pick, meaning the onus of winning for the franchise would likely be on his shoulders. Not that something like that is inherently wrong, as we've seen many greats build their respective franchises franchises up from close to nothing at times. But for a well-run and storied franchise like the Celtics to get a chance to pick you up thanks to the highway robbery of a deal made with the Nets years before, it just makes things that much easier. Starting with his rookie season, Tatum made an immediate impact on winning with his already competitive Celtics squad, who earned the #1 seed for the Eastern Conference just the previous year. He would go on to average 14, 5, and 2 and help his squad make the 4 seed. This run would be most notable thanks to Tatum's veteran-like performance in the conference finals against LeBron and the Cavs, highlighted by Tatum's thunderous dunk on the King himself. Although losing, this again fast-tracked Tatum's timeline to stardom almost immediately, which would be both beneficial and disadvantageous. Tatum definitely was the centerpiece for Boston heading forward, but now the pressure began to weigh on JT's shoulders. This is a large reason why Tatum doesn't get the age excuse other young stars get when they struggle in the playoffs. Since Tatum already displayed his ability at a high level on nearly the brightest stage possible in the NBA, most fans won't accept anything less than the best now. Thankfully, for the most part, Tatum would deliver on those expectations in his upcoming years. Tatum led the Celtics to the playoffs in each of his next 4 seasons, including some impressive bouts against Miami in 2020, Brooklyn in 2021, followed up by an amazing 2022 playoff run. Calling it amazing may be controversial though, as some thought he did more to harm his squad than help. I'm not calling it either way, but I do believe they wouldn't have been in most of those situations to begin with if not for Jayson Tatum. Let's peel back the curtain on what Tatum's most crucial criticisms are though, because if I had not mentioned them, you could easily think he's the most beloved player in the Northeast currently. To boil it down, Tatum's criticisms are 3 things: finishing, decision making, and mentality concerns. Let's start with finishing. Usually JT's pretty knocked down from anywhere on the floor, inside or outside the arc. But as playoffs progressed, Tatum's mid-range and finishing at the rim ability waned greatly. In the finals, Tatum even shot a near 20 percentage points higher outside the arc than he did in, with 48% on 3s and 29% on 2s. Tatum's supporters would likely point to Jayson's proclamation of a shoulder injury during the current offseason, but not everyone has accepted that answer and rather has called it an excuse. Regardless, the Celtics' overall driving ability hurt them in this series, especially considering the Warriors' lack of a strong interior defender. Ime Udoka, the Celtics head coach, had this to say about the matter: "Some of our drives haven't been as physical as other times. That's an emphasis with us. I've mentioned hunting, looking for fouls instead of going up to finish. Their rotations are pretty direct every time. The guy is going to be there. It's just about making the read." Much of this conversation began as Tatum's 95 turnovers eclipsed the record for most by any player in a single postseason of all time. Playmaking hasn't always been a part of Tatum's game, but he did a nice job of showcasing his improvements in that department throughout the recent playoffs, in my opinion. Although, with his stat lines that feature 3 for 17 from shooting in Game 1, 9 for 23 in Game 3, 8 for 23 in Game 4, and 6 for 18 in Game 6, accompanied by 24 turnovers throughout the series, it's clearly understood where this narrative started, right or wrong. And the big one, Tatum's perplexing mentality. Sure, at times, Tatum flashes his competitiveness and willingness to win, but a large amount of NBA fans have been questioning his Mamba mentality, if you will. Some of his heavy criticism is a bit unfair, admittedly, as the bar is just set so high for his big game performances. And with that being the case, the finals rallied a lot of haters to the feet of Tatum for his lack of urgency when scoring. One of the biggest flashpoints of the narrative happened in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, and him only putting up 13 points on 6 of 18 shooting, with just 1 shot in the second half. After Tatum's and the Celtics Game 5 loss, Fox Sports' Kevin Wildes went on to say, "It is not too much to ask a superstar to play like a superstar. That's all I'm asking for. We're asking role players to play like role players. We're asking Al Horford to play like Al Horford. We're asking Jaylen Brown to play like Jaylen Brown. That's it. We want Tatum to play like Tatum." And he's not. He continued with, "He's missing free throws, he's turning the ball over, he's shooting air balls, he's being passive, that's it. I just want Tatum to be who I think he can be, and who he is." And it's not happening, and it's not inspiring, which is the most frustrating part. Tatum's lack of urgency was also highlighted in their midseason defeat by the 76ers, as they gave up a 28-2 run in the first quarter. Tatum's quote after the game was, "I don't think I was being aggressive enough coming off those pick and rolls," he said post-game. "Sometimes I didn't even look at the basket trying to create something out of nothing. Sometimes it don't hurt to be aggressive, and that opens up things as well. I need to be a little more aggressive. Was being a little too passive and careless with the ball." While it can be conceded that there has to be some level of competitiveness in Tatum's psyche to have reached this point, however, some may wonder if all those things that have come easy to Tatum may have made him complacent. Now, moving on to the Celtics' prolific two-way star, Jaylen Brown. For Jaylen, things didn't come quite as easy as they did for his counterpart, but that's not to say he is a stranger to great work ethic, one great enough to bring you from the bottom of rankings in Georgia high school ball all the way to the leading scorer on a finals team. Jaylen's past is less documented, but what we do know is he was raised by his parents in Marietta, Georgia, where he would go on to attend Wheeler High School and become a consensus All-American. Brown left high school ranked number 4 out of the top 100 prospects of the class. Although, unlike his counterpart Jayson Tatum, he wouldn't bring his talents to a blue blood. Instead, he attended the University of California, and in his lone season with the squad, he led his team in scoring with 15 points per game and 43% from the floor with 29% from 3. Thanks to this, the Golden Bears finished 3rd in their conference and earned a number 4 seed for the NCAA tournament. However, the celebration was short-lived thanks to an upset at the hands of number 13 Hawaii, with Brown finishing with just 4 points on 1 of 6 shooting in his 17 minutes played. Regardless of the outcome, the NBA was calling for Brown. He would declare for the 2016 draft where, again, the Celtics had a top draft pick due to the trading genius of general manager Danny Ainge. And like Tatum, Brown too was selected with the 3rd overall pick in the 2016 NBA draft. Admittedly, Brown had a slower start than Tatum in the terms of numbers, as he put up 7-2-1 in his first season. However, his impact on winning was immediate, with the Celtics shooting up to the 1st seed thanks to Jaylen's play and an overall great Celtics squad. Given his lackluster start though, Brown didn't reach the same praise that Tatum is experiencing now. Instead, he faced a lot of pressure and scrutiny to perform better in order to make right on his draft position. Brown was expected to be the Celtics' LeBron stopper for the series, but as nearly all of LeBron defenders do, he struggled, and quite mightily. His comments about LeBron during the series, and maybe the moment Stephen Curry eviscerated him during the regular season, comprised most of Jaylen's surrounding narrative at the time. Therefore, in his upcoming seasons, especially with the addition of Jayson Tatum happening in the offseason, Brown would have to continue to refine his craft and progress his game in order to become the player that could help a team win a title one day. It seemed like Brown's role was diminishing, if anything, heading into the next season. But with subsequent injuries to the new Celtic additions of Gordon Hayward and then later in the season Kyrie Irving, Brown's role required him to be a top 3 player on the team and a number 2 scoring option. Evidently, Brown would answer the call, finishing 2nd on his team with 4.5 points per game, up from the 6.6 in his rookie year. Tack that on with 5 rebounds and nearly 2 assists per game, and it was definitely a step up from his rookie season. That being said, Brown might have not been prepared for the amount of responsibility that he would have because of the injuries, as he ranked 122nd out of the 123 players that took 75 or more threes. Even worse, the Celtics were ranked as the worst offensive team with him on the court. Off the court, they ranked 10. Still, Brown finished with 23 games in which he scored 20 points or more throughout the season, so expectations began to rise for Brown. And with him ranking 417th out of the 430 players, he would have to. After a somewhat down year in 2018-19, thanks to Kyrie and Hayward's reintroduction to the team rotation, meaning fewer touches for Brown and a bench role, he had a more team-first attitude to his contributions, meaning a 13-4-1 on the stat sheet. Although Jaylen would finally break through to NBA stardom with his year 4 stint with the Celtics. In 2019 to 2020, Jaylen put up a whopping 26-2, helping his team reach the Eastern Conference Finals yet again in the NBA bubble in Orlando, Florida. With his $115 million contract being signed before the season started, Jaylen eased fans and their front office's mind by taking that next step in the evolution of his game. Even with this jump in numbers, Tatum's next step overshadowed Jaylen's performance for the most part, as JT put up 23, 7, and 3. Even with that, Jaylen's expectations rose greatly as the team departed from Kyrie and Hayward. Jaylen didn't mind that though, and continued to work so they could finally get over that conference finals hump. Yet they would fall to the Miami Heat in 6. Even with yet another conference finals loss, Celtic spirits were high as they knew they had a bright future. And with Jaylen Brown's continuous progression, the sky was a limit as long as the rest of the team played their part. Jaylen's sole All-Star selection came in 2021, where he put up 25, 6, and 3, continuing to show improvement throughout his entire game. Becoming a leader to the team was Jaylen's next step, as he showed his chops in nearly all other facets of the game besides some minimal concerns with playmaking. Jaylen also brought up his 3-point average to 40%, a far cry from the 29% he had from the arc in college. Add that onto his new career highs in field goal percentage and from the free throw line, and it's fair to say that Jaylen was a clear foundational piece for the team's championship aspirations. And that's without mentioning his constant development from his defensive game, which improved greatly since his blunders against LeBron in the 2017-18 NBA Finals. As far as being a leader, Brown was taking great steps in that department too. He often took responsibility for the team's night-to-night missteps and reassured fans and media he was working on it with the guys. But not only that, Brown's off-the-court work has been nothing short of exemplary. He earned an NBA Cares Community Assist Award in 2019-20 and became one of the NBA's forefront voices on their handling of the Black Lives Matter movement in basketball. This made Jaylen a prominent voice in the Celtics locker room, but also in NBA circles everywhere. Oftentimes, Jaylen's referred to being too smart for basketball, with draft scouts even theorizing he'd get bored of basketball before his rookie extension would be signed. This was perceived as a negative at the time, but Jaylen's intellect obviously makes him into the fantastic player he is today. At this point, it seemed like Jaylen's ceiling kept rising by the season, and any more attempts to place a cap on his talents would be futile. You could trust that there was no longer any concerns about the $115 million contract or the draft capital used on him. Even so, a wrist injury put Brown out for the playoffs as the Celtics were bounced in round 1 versus the Nets. Tatum performed excellently throughout the series, dropping a 50 ball for their only win in Game 3, but fans were pretty sour towards Brown's absence. So the narrative shifted even further in Tatum's direction as far as the who's the number one question. And finally, the 2022 season is where it worked out for Brown and the Celtics. Even with his 24-6-4 and ever so slight drop off from his numbers a year before, it was clear that this version of Jaylen Brown was the best yet. After the countless trade rumors, roster additions, front office and coaching changes, 2022 was the year that the Celtics' dedication to development and evolution would pay off for the green and white. With new head coach Ime Udoka, the Celtics were determined to finally reach the NBA Finals, and thanks to a late season resurgence and phenomenal postseason performances from key Celtics players, they would. Jaylen would perform consistently well throughout the 2022 playoff matchups, with multiple 20-point games in each series. Highlights from the run may come from his 36-6, 27-12-4, and 26-8-6 games versus Milwaukee, 49-1, and 6 other 20-plus point games versus Miami, or his 34-7-3 during the closeout game versus the eventual NBA champion Golden State Warriors. Brown had his own issues with turnovers throughout the playoffs, like his co-star Jayson Tatum, although his uptick in scoring, defense, and hustle plays endeared him to the NBA and Celtics fans. This is where we find ourselves today, where the clear distinction of quote-unquote best player on the Celtics squad is more muddled than ever. I'll get into this further, but a big takeaway from Jaylen's arc has been his constant improvement and evolution of his game to become a perennial all-star caliber player, capable of being the best player on the NBA Finals team, which no one would have thought seeing his college career or first couple years in the league. If Jaylen never blossomed to the star that he is, the Celtics are likely around the 5 to 7 seed from year to year. And while Jayson is undoubtedly great and the same could be said about him, they don't achieve any of this without Jaylen Brown. So far in this video, we've gone over Jayson Tatum's unthinkable, fantastic start to a still young NBA career as he tries to maintain his insanely high bar, as well as covering Jaylen Brown's tumultuous rise from inefficient, questionable draft prospect and struggling starter to NBA star and the best player on a finals team that brought an NBA dynasty to 6 games. But who's better? That seems to be the million-dollar question for NBA media and all they seem to care about, because as we all know, the NBA loves drama. If you cared about my opinion, I'd probably still go with Jayson Tatum. Although, if Jaylen continues to get better while Tatum continues to plateau, although plateauing at a borderline superstar level, the conversation could get extremely interesting. And the reason I think this comparison is so interesting is given the respective players' arcs in their careers so far. Let me explain. As Tatum immediately became a star in his first season with his performance in the Eastern Conference Finals and has subsequently struggled with eclipsing that already high expectation, Brown instead had to start from the bottom with repeated concerns with his efficiency and playmaking, constant trade rumors, and confusion about his role with the team. Brown would climb up from that spot though, with leaps and bounds of progression each year. So, as Jaylen's stock continues to rise, Jayson's has begun to falter, and that's why comparing these players can be so difficult, as well as why this duo was high on my list for ideas in the series. My opinion isn't the only one important in this though, yours is too. So, after you've gotten all the info, what do you think the difference between Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown is? Do you think Tatum's intangibles and stats make him a clear favorite? Or does Jaylen's coachability, progression, and defensive prowess make him the dark horse pick here? Or, option C, maybe we just appreciate them both. There's nothing wrong with that either. Let me know what you think down below, and this video has been made by Underdog. Peace.